Come on in, settle down. All right, welcome to the next talk here on the main stage. It is with great pleasure that today we're going to hear again about the impact that the software we are creating and the content that we are providing to the world is creating. I don't know how many of you have been in the other talk yesterday that was also focused on sustainability impact of our applications? A few? Okay, so you have some knowledgeable people and a lot of new people who are interested in the topic. Carsten has quite an extensive background, and the topic is actually very important, as we've heard over the last couple of days here at NEOS conference. So I'm really excited for the talk, Know Your Content Footprint, Sustainable Publishing in a Digital World. And please welcome on stage Carsten Windler.
Okay, thank you. All right, okay. Thanks everyone for being here on a Friday afternoon after a long conference. I know it's tough and I try to keep it as entertaining as possible. Usually I start these I do these talks for quite some years now. Usually I started with some graphics or information about how bad the situation actually is. Turned out this doesn't really matter. People actually know that. It's like with smokers or people who drink alcohol or eat a lot of sugar. They know that it's bad, still we do it. So it doesn't really help if we have these labels anywhere or so. Let's rather try a different approach this time. What if I could convince you that green IT or sustainable IT is not only good for the environment, it would be also good for your company or yourself, like when you're self-employed, or it would even improve the quality of your code. It's a bold claim, I know, so let's dive in. First of all, who am I? My name is Carsten. I work at a company called Plan A. We are a carbon accounting company. That means we collect the data from our customers and we estimate their carbon footprint out of it, and we give them instructions or ideas how to reduce their carbon footprint. In my free time, mostly at night, I write articles, for example, for the PHP magazine about PHP in general, clean code in PHP. I also wrote a book about that a while ago. So that's a bit about me. Enough of the shameless advertisement. Let's go. So first of all, let's maybe start with the basics. Why software causes emissions? This is definitely something, everybody knows. Yeah, of course. When you run npm install, your machine really is on fire. You feel the energy which is being used in your machine for all these operations. And that's quite okay. It's obvious. We have the CPU. We do have all the network, like every application nowadays uses the internet. We do have storage, be it cloud or local storage. All these hard drives, they have to be produced and they have to be stored somewhere. They have to be cooled. And of course, we have also the devices itself, like monitors or a mouse or whatnot. Okay, so the energy, of course, doesn't only come out of the socket. It has to be produced somewhere. This here is a tool which is called electricity maps. It shows you, it has quite a lot of information. The most important part is probably you see the current carbon intensity. That means how dirty is the electricity at the very moment. At that moment, this was 2 weeks, it doesn't matter, a couple of days ago. Sunny day with a lot of wind, so the carbon intensity was very low, 100 grams of carbon per kilowatt hour. This was quite low, so for Germany, very, very low, great thing. You see it here in this curve. There's a lot of sun and a lot of wind, so the renewables kick in. Of course, there are also times when this is not so good. This was in March. Not so much wind, not so much sun. You see the carbon intensity was quite high, so the energy mix was very dirty. Okay, so what do we do out of this? I mean, this is just, we will come to this part of the carbon intensity later, just for you as your information. The thing is, it's not only the usage of the device which causes the emission, it's rather actually the production. So when we look at a normal laptop like mine here, that it's like the biggest part of it, the emissions come from the production, which includes transport, getting the minerals out of the ground, disposal at the end of the lifetime, etc. This is why it's so super important to keep these things running. You see this light blue. The usage is actually not that much. Of course, it matters, but the biggest part comes from the production. And as I said, we really have to make sure that these machines can be operated as long as possible to avoid these emissions. And the problem is really big. So we have 62 million tons of electronic wastes alone in 2022 worldwide. This is a huge mountain, and I think nobody can really visualize how much that is. So I'm trying it with one of my favorite topics, chocolate bars. If we say we have 100-gram chocolate bar, this would be equal, this amount would be 620 billion chocolate bars. And since we in Germany, we express everything as football fields, I asked ChatGPT, I cannot do this myself, how much football fields would that be? And this would be around 900,000 football fields of chocolate bars when you lay them next to each other, or 2.5 times the size of Luxembourg. Okay, now we got that. I think it's still not very apparent what that means, but you get an idea how much that is actually. And the thing is not going to be better through the AI hype which we have. This is here an estimation how the power demand will accelerate over the next years. You see here, like depending on different scenarios, with AI, it will be quite a lot, reaching 1,000 terawatt hours. This is the energy consumption of Japan right now. So all the data centers of the world will consume as much energy as Japan if the thing goes on like it does. I think this is even a very, very careful projection. And this is the reason why big companies like Microsoft already started ramping up power plants again. Like this is 3 Miles Island. This is a power plant which in the 1980s almost created a nuclear catastrophe. They turned it off since then, and now they're turning it on again. So what could happen? I mean, there you see how much the companies really are in demand of electricity. So in total, what's the carbon footprint of the ICT? This is the information and communication technology. It's like 4%, and this was the pre-AI hype estimation. It's very hard to find good numbers here. This is if I have to say it, it's an estimation. I think it's much higher already, and it will by end of 2030, it will become really big. So now we have that settled. Let's talk about how can we actually measure emissions. Because when I see my laptop here, all is cool, right? There's nothing coming out of it, no fumes or anything. So this is always, I mean, if I abuse it, probably it will, but this is a different topic. So you don't see the electricity which is, or the dirt which is produced to get the electricity. So how can we do that? Of course, we do have tools for that. The most simplest one and probably easiest to use is the website Carbon Calculator. And I tried it with CNN.com, for example. And you can see here, this is really a super bad result, 5.75 grams of CO2 per page visit. I will explain a little bit later what that means. But you can see, okay, depending on their database, that website is super bad. But again, 5 grams is, does that mean, right? It's not so much. So let's have a look again at chocolate bars. 20 page visits alone is already 1 chocolate bar. And if we calculate that over the monthly visits, what do you think, how many monthly visits does CNN.com has? Like 1 million? 100,000? 200 millions? That's a good guess. You saw that I had left some space here. It's 430 million monthly visits, at least according to my source here in May 2025. Of course, these are all estimations. The thing is, last year when I did this exercise, it was actually double the amount, so I had to adjust my numbers here. But the thing is, it's a lot, right? So this website is really has a lot of visits. What does it mean in chocolate bars again? So when we do some rough math here, going just with 5 grams, over 12 months, we end up with 26,000 metric tons of carbon just for one website. This would be the equivalent of roughly 6,000 gasoline-powered cars for 1 year, or 380 football fields, just for one website. Now this is a big one, I know. That's why I choose it. But if you think about the millions of websites or billions of websites we have in the internet, there is quite some waste happening. And why is CNN.com now so bad? So I opened this, it's hard to see, I will show you in a minute. So I opened it in the inspector. I did nothing, I just opened the website in iPhone 12 mode, and I got already this. Just for one headline, for one image, and for a bit of text, 20 megabytes of resources, and 120 requests just for this little piece of information. That is so bad that it really physically hurts. And this is exactly now the same thing that this website Carbon Calculator takes. It takes all the information, what is loaded over the internet. It basically says the data transfer, it takes it as a proxy, as a variable we can use to calculate. And then it uses the sustainable web design model, which uses this handy formula. Where is it? There it is. No worries, I will not explain this in detail. In a nutshell, it's basically, as I said, we have the data transfer, then we have some emissions factors, as you call them. So we say, okay, 1 gigabyte equals that much of kilowatt hours, for example. Then we take the carbon intensity and we got our emissions. It's an easy model, but at least it's something. It's something to start. And I think it is a good approach to make at least websites comparable. But there is a lot of criticism on these models for good cause. I also would, although these numbers, this 5.75, that looks so accurate, so precise, it's just a very rough guess. So don't take this for granted, because what this website Carbon Calculator cannot do is it cannot look behind the scenes. So what if your website is driven by some really over-engineered fancy infrastructure? It could also be a static website. The Carbon Calculator cannot know. All right, so we will have a look in a minute how this can be measured better, but maybe now the most important question is, how does the Neos.io website perform? I guess everybody wants to know, so let's have a look. It's not that bad, 0.5 grams. This is actually, it's a very image-heavy website, so for that it's quite good. So although this tool always says, oh no, it's not that bad, given the fact that it's a presentation website. So well done, Neos team. It's really good. Okay, next point is now, how can we actually, if you have a web application, how can we now get the emissions from that? There are a couple of tools. This is a screenshot from the Green Metrics tool. It's a quite advanced tool. So basically you have your Kubernetes cluster, you have your little nodes in there where you run your software on, and the Green Metrics tool uses some chipset APIs to get information about the power consumption, about the memory usage, etc. This is because it was used for battery management for laptops, these APIs. So it takes this information from there and calculates the emissions. This is quite advanced. The setup is a bit complex. Also, it doesn't work really good on a Mac. That's why I never really tried it out. Another tool which is easier to use is called GreenFrame. What you can do here, you can use it on your local Docker setup. Basically, it just listens on the Docker daemon while you run some scenario. I think it's Playwright or what they use. So you create your scenario, and then it clicks through the application in the headless browser, and then you can get the emissions from that. This was my trial here with my local Neos installation. 74 milligrams per execution. That's quite low, actually. Super cached, and it's only the standard website, the sample website, which is really basic. So would be interesting to know whether really one of these projects which we saw yesterday in the NEOS award. That would be quite interesting. But anyway, this is another tool which you can use. The third one which I would like to introduce is if you run your software in the cloud, you cannot just go there and get the emissions. I mean, all these cloud providers, they have by now tools to give you the carbon emissions. They report them, but especially like tools for AWS, they are so bad, you cannot use them. So the thing is, this tool is quite cool. Since the cloud providers, they know everything you do on the cloud. This is their business model. You pay it for them. So you can get the information about your cloud usage via an API. This is what this tool does. Basically, it says, give me the cloud usage, and I will calculate based on these facts. Again, emission factors, carbon intensity, I will calculate the carbon emissions. All right, so this is really, if you have a big setup in the cloud, this is what we also use internally. This is not a screenshot from our tool, though. This is from the website of Cloud Carbon Footprint. Okay. Now we know how to measure emissions, and now it would be time to reduce them. And the thing about a CMS, what I really find interesting is that we have all aspects. We have front end, we have back end. So we can start somewhere. Let's start in the front end. And let's have a look. So basically, everything you know about website performance can be applied here. The better the performance, the fewer the emissions. You can really roughly say that. So I won't tell you now about all the possible things which you can do. I think most likely you know them much better than I do. I'm just a backend developer, so I will not talk so much about front end. But in the end, it's really all the things which you should do anyway. They help. Now the funny thing is, for some reason, nobody does it. This is a screenshot from the HTTP archive, and you can see here how a website, the size of websites have evolved over time. 15 years ago, it was much smaller, so websites, desktop websites have increased by 500%, and mobile websites even by 1,500 plus. So we see this pattern somewhere, while some things get smaller, other things get bigger. So this is somehow, I don't know, it's somehow pretty weird. Okay, what can we do about that? Let's have a look. Again, apply all these things which you know about performance optimization. They really help, and in the end, your users benefit also from them. And then let's have another look at the assets. If you can, try to use less. I know it impresses everybody if you have big animations, videos, images, like these terrible stock images. I'm a big fan of bad stock images because they have so much, like this, the arm in front of the face and this sign with office. I have no idea. But anyway, what I want to say is, if you can avoid it, now you are working on a CMS. That makes things a bit more complicated because you cannot probably prohibit your users or the end users from uploading images. I know that, but it's still, maybe you can do anything. I have no idea. And if you have to use, and this is really something which makes me quite mad, use lazy loading if you can. It's so easy nowadays. CNN.com does not do it. This is so crazy. I don't understand it. We could save a lot of emissions if we would just use lazy loading on CNN.com. This is why I just repeat that. I don't get it. Videos and ads, please don't do autoplay. I don't know who likes autoplay. Seriously, probably nobody. Still, it happens. Background videos are also just a waste, in my opinion. And yeah, let's ads. This is also a thing. Ads are having a big part of the internet traffic. So when you open a website and you see what's going in all the trackers and all the autoplay animations, videos, etc., which are running because of the ads, that's huge. So if you can do anything about it, and I know people say, yeah, but websites have to monetize. Yeah, that's just, they have to find, now with AI sucking up all the information and providing AI, this AI answers, with people are not visiting the websites anymore, this whole AI ad thing, I guess, will anyway collapse at some point. But who knows? We cannot say. Design is also a very important thing. I hope where you as agencies, for example, can have a big buy-in. Mobile first, of course, yeah, should be, in my opinion, should be really the way to go, because mobile websites obviously are smaller, are faster, are leaner. They should be, let's say. Then there's also a nice approach, is typography versus images. So there are websites which are just using text. So maybe some CSS animation, CSS graphics here, but no images, like no PNG or whatnot. This is also quite cool. So the website, it's a different approach, of course, where it makes sense. Sometimes you have to use images. Less animations, I think this also makes sense. And known patterns. So when you create a website, don't try to reinvent the wheel and build some fancy navigation where the user is sitting then and like, okay, how can I get now to the information? The less time users take on your website, the better, the more they save energy, if you like. And also avoid dark patterns. This is patterns which keep the user engaged, like this doom scrolling, for example. This is a terrible example of how to keep people more or less addicted to websites or to tools, or try to keep them engaged on the website as long as possible by, I don't know, there's, especially in the e-commerce, there are some patterns which are really bad. Okay, but if you, I'm a big fan of tools in this regard. If you are interested in how to improve your website even more, there's a tool called EcoGrader, which I personally like very much. It's like the website Carbon Calculator, plus it gives you some information. So for example, you see here like a little breakdown of where all the transfer comes from. You get an idea, you get some ratings, so you get an idea how this tool kind of rates your website, why it gets like this 53 out of 100. And the very good thing is here that it tells you, this is a bit hard to read, I guess. So it tells you, for example, for CNN.com, use lazy loading, guys. It's not, this is already a big minus here. Okay, so this tool is quite nice. Let's go over to the backend. Now, when you use a tool like Neos, of course, you do not have so much possibilities if you write your own extensions or plugins or how that's called in that case. But if you are dependent on an existing infrastructure and an existing backend, you can maybe not do so much. Anyway, still, we want to have a look. Algorithms, if you have to use algorithms, check if they fit. Of course, this is a standard example which everybody does. In the end, how often do you implement an algorithm really, like a search or a sort algorithm? I don't know. It doesn't happen so often, I guess. So this is more like, yeah, of course, we should have an eye on that. Database optimization, from my point of view, is much more important. If I would get like €1 for every missing table index, I would probably be already a rich man. So check your database, check your queries. This is where you can get much more performance out of. Careful caching is also important. So of course you can cache the hell out of it, like Neos does, I guess. So when I looked at the caching, wow, everything is basically cached. Otherwise it would not run so smooth. But of course make sure that you don't, so because caching also takes storage, and if you use a lot of storage, then this is also kind of counterproductive, because then you have to update it a lot and everything. So be careful with the caching and don't cache everything just because you can. And then prefer native functions. I will give a little example later on. So we in the PHP world especially, we do love our composer packages. Maybe sometimes it's not the right idea. Again, I will give you an example in a second. And also frameworks, libraries, packages. This is really something where you can, or where you should have a closer look if this is really the right tool for the job. And the last thing, code profiling. Who of you uses code profiling during your development work, like Xdebug or other third-party tools? Is there anybody? Ah, yeah, some are. Okay, it's hard to see here, sorry. So yeah, that's a good way. And so if you use Xdebug, for example, it also has a code profiler built in, which you can use. You should really do that, because then you can spot bottlenecks. This is here an example. This is a little tool I like to use to compare like functionality functions here. I use now the well-known Carbon. This is the date time API for PHP. And native date functions. For this is a real example, like the real life example I found in our code base. So basically this tool just runs both functions 1,000 times and compares it. So what do you think, which one is faster, carbon or the native date? Who's for carbon? Anybody? Date? Probably, it's easy, right? Because date is a native function. Yeah. But how much do you think? How much faster is it? 2 times or 3 times? 10 times, almost. It's almost 8 times faster. At least this result varies quite a lot depending on the machine where you run it on. But there's a clear tendency. And the thing is, okay, if you have this one time in your code, doesn't really matter. But in our case, in my company, we are a data-heavy company. We do CSV exports are still a thing. We do them a lot. And when you have 500,000 lines and you have 3 times the carbon call in your code for every line, this sums up. So I was really able, by doing this, by just replacing carbon with native date functions to reduce the runtime of our export quite significantly. And of course, carbon offers a lot more functionality, I know, but you shouldn't use it then just for everything, just because you have it. What's the deal? It's even more to write. I don't really get it, why it's so often used. All right. Then we do have also the infrastructure, which we should have a look on. So cloud optimization would be worth a talk of itself. Unfortunately, I don't have the time. So, but the thing is, usually also in my company again and again, oh, the CSV export is slow. Let's just add another, I don't know, some more. Let's just add power. This is the thing with the cloud. It makes it so easy to provide new resources that people will just use it. It's easier than to fix your code, unless you have to pay the bill. Also, CDN or edge caching, this could be something which you could do if your application is provided worldwide, then CDN makes sense. If you're probably hosting still on-premise or like these good old school shared hosters, there's nothing bad about that in my eyes. There's the green hosting database, also for cloud hosters, which gives you information about which one are using renewable energy, which one are using refurbished hardware. So you get an idea, maybe you should prefer these over the other. And yeah, also circular economy is a thing. If you can use refurbished hardware, if you have your own data center or you have your rented co-location, that can also help a lot. And then probably the most interesting part for me is nowadays actually the why. So we do use technology everywhere. And sometimes I think we stopped asking ourselves why we do that. So this was actually, I recently saw a study that people are, they're getting stupider by using AI. And I also get this when I'm using an AI agent to develop my application. Afterwards, I don't really know my application. I have a bunch of code there, which is more or less working, but I don't really get it anymore. And I love I love this tool. That's the smart questions. Oh, I hate this brown nosing. But it depends how you use it. And we should really think about if we use AI in our daily life, because of course it's fun to have these images here. Like, yeah, I get it. You laugh 2 times about it. Then you have a trend. Everybody is posting their action figures or their Ghibli images. But at some point, it's lame. The thing is, this AI everywhere. This is Notepad. Windows Notepad will get AI support. Seriously, I didn't know that anybody was still using Windows Notepad, but at least Microsoft thinks people do. So we should really think about, do we need AI everywhere? Given the fact that AI, as I showed you already, is consuming a lot of energy and will consume much more in the future. And then there's one thing, this saying, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, or something like that. And I have to make a confession here. Back in the days, I was a freelancer and I sold Typo 3 websites to people who did not need it. So basically, they just needed a small website, and I sold them Typo 3. Oh gosh, still feel very dirty. But this haunts me till today. But back then, yeah, come on, I knew the tool. I was quite fast with it. It was fun, so why not? Nowadays, I would never do this again, but yeah, that's it. So if you use something, think about if it's really proper for the job. And when I see now NEOS 9 with this amazing event-sourced content repository, I mean, wow, what the heck? This is really advanced stuff. There are many use cases for it, but I guess not every use case is right for that. Does it really require such an advanced tool? I mean, NEOS comes with 16,000 files, 200 megabytes installed. This was just the default install with the sample site package. It's already quite a lot. So maybe, and this is probably the worst place to ask on such a conference, do I really need a CMS all the time? Or maybe it's the best place to ask, I don't know. Of course, I saw yesterday the NEOS Awards, great tools. They all required this, I guess, from what I saw. But maybe there are projects where you don't really need it, or you maybe need a smaller one or a different one, I don't know. So before you boo me off the stage or you want to beat me up afterwards, relax. It's more like think about it. Also, do you need a relational database or maybe a different one? Do you, I don't know, maybe another language makes more sense. Maybe you should try it, your little web service, maybe write it in Go if you can, then in PHP, because we all know PHP. Sometimes it's not the fastest. And also a favorite topic of mine is this database abstraction layers. Damn, it's hard to say. So DBAL. I did this test also in my company. So a colleague of mine wrote CSV export with using Eloquent. Yeah, we use Laravel. It's okay. So Eloquent and some collection filters. I don't know who knows Laravel, but this is probably the worst combination you can do. And you can see it here in the memory and in the time usage. Wow, that was bad. It was just a little bit of changes. We were able to reduce the export time and the memory peak, which was very important because now the memory peak was, like the memory usage was linear. Before that, it was growing depending on the size of the export. So with just a little bit of work and thinking, if my colleague, they used Eloquent and the filters because they knew it. That was their tool. They didn't really think about if this makes sense in this moment. So this is the only thing I want to say. Think about if it really makes sense. And now as we are coming to a close of this little talk, I would also talk about the benefits of sustainable software. When you want to introduce these kind of measures or actions in your company or in your, I don't know, in your project, there's usually the question, what do we have from it? Most people do not really care about the carbon reduction, but there's also what we call the ROI of decarbonization. So the return on investment. This is some stupid talk, banker English, if you like. So basically it just says, I have my investment, what do I get from my investment? And if I can reduce the costs, then the result will increase. So, and this is the good thing. When we look at, for example, cost reduction in a cloud infrastructure, FinOps is a discipline where they try to reduce the cloud costs as much as possible by doing a couple of things. We do have the new GreenOps discipline where people try to reduce carbon as much as possible. And you can see here that there's quite an overlap here. And this is the cool thing. So even if you're working in that field and even if you don't actually want that, by reducing costs, you also reduce carbon emissions and the other way around. So that's quite cool. This is usually a thing where managers get like, oh, we can reduce costs, tell me more. So maybe there you can get your foot in the door. And then there are, of course, other benefits. User experience, who likes slow loading websites? I don't think anybody does. So this is, or who likes fast applications? Of course, that's cool for the user experience. Accessibility. I mean, this Barrierefreiheitsstärkungsgesetz is coming 28th. This is next week, guys. So hurry up if you haven't done it yet. And if you are required to, if your website falls under the law, then hurry up, because otherwise it can get expensive. But this accessibility is already built in when you use green IT or sustainability software measures, you try to be as simple as possible, and this immediately usually translates into also accessible websites. And you have in my opinion, higher revenue, better conversion rate, faster websites, easier to use, broader user base because more people are able to use your website. If you ever tried a screen reader, like for people who are visually impaired, if you ever tried to use a screen reader on a modern website, damn, this is really hard. So everybody should do this once, and then you forget about your fancy JavaScript menus. And employee retention, at least from my point of view, for example, I worked before that in e-commerce, I worked in travel industry. At some point, I couldn't do this anymore because I couldn't stand the business models anymore. But if we at least would have done something, at least on the software side, to reduce emissions, that could have kept me, but at that point, I just had to say, okay, bye guys, I have to leave. And with that, I would like to close. We always talk a lot about the footprint of software, but what I would like to do is also to talk about the handprint of things. When we start doing these things, giving this talk, or you start thinking about sustainability, it's usually that you also inspire others. And this is much more important than just looking what can we reduce, but look at the handprint, what can you achieve otherwise? And this closing close here from Dr. Eckhard von Hirschhausen, which really resonates with me. Getting active is the best remedy against helplessness, and in my case, it feels much better. Okay, thanks a lot for your attention, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carsten. We do have some questions, and if you still have a question, you can still submit it. We do have some time. Thank you very much for your insights and examples and tools that we can all use. There is a question here. Do you have insights on the impact of light mode versus dark mode?
It depends. I'm not sure about the technical details, but it really depends on the screen technology. So I think it works for OLED screens, the OLED screens. There it definitely has an impact. But yeah, this is really per case. I would need to look it up, but people say it has an impact, yeah. But again, it depends on the technology which the screen uses.
Okay. And there's a second question here. You showed us tools that compare emissions. How well do you think they take into account the way the electricity is produced? Because, as you showed in your other charts here in Germany, it varies so much the amount of renewable energy that's available at a certain
It's a very good point,
time.
It's a very good point. So, of course, these tools do not take the exact moment of time into account. Some tools, like the website carbon calculator, even takes the average global carbon intensity, which is, of course, it's a super average number. That's why I mean these tools, don't take them too literally, don't take them too, they don't know it. It's more like a big guess. So if you would really like to use the exact carbon intensity, you have to use tools like the Green Metrics tool, which I also showed. These tools are super advanced. They trigger the electricity maps API to get the exact carbon intensity at that moment where you run the software. In the end, it depends on what approach you want to take, because do you really want to know the exact carbon intensity right now, or is it for you more like when you take the average carbon intensity, in the end you achieve the same thing. If you think about the average, or if you take the exact at the moment, what you want to do is you reduce the carbon emissions, and it works either ways. So it's maybe not even necessary. But this can be interesting, and sorry, I'm talking now. Just stop me if you...
No, that's fine.
So there's also a concept which I didn't have the time to introduce. It's called carbon awareness. Basically, you can, for example, if you have workloads, machine learning, training models, for example, or you have big exports, you can use this tool like electricity maps. It gives you a forecast. It can say to you, okay, in the next 12 hours, the carbon intensity will be quite low. So maybe in 6 hours, run your workloads, because then you reduce the emissions. This is at the moment quite in the making, but it's not widely adopted because it's quite complicated. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question that just came in. Could you share your perspective on the trade-off between a developer spending a few hours in a air-conditioned office, improving a few kilobytes of data on a website that's only called a couple of times a day?
That's a very good point. Exactly. This is really this is the point makes absolute sense. So if you have my private website, I would not optimize because it has, I don't know, 20 page views. It's a very good point. So this topic is so complicated that you really have to take into account a lot of variables. That's what it makes it so hard. So in this case, yeah, it makes no sense, definitely, because you might take longer to optimize your website than you get out of it.
So your recommendation would be to start where the biggest impact is.
Exactly, yeah. So if you just have a small website, then maybe you should still do it to increase the performance. That would be other benefit. So if you work on your website, maybe you get more users when your website is performing too bad. So this could be a thing, but yeah, it's always a trade-off.
And you learn new knowledge that you can apply it in other projects as well.
Exactly.
All right. We do have a speaker gift for you.
Oh, thank you very much.
So you get a set of our Neos N as well.
That's so cool.
And Neos Honey.
Oh, great.
For you to take home.
Thank you very much.
So give a warm round of applause for Carsten.
Thank you.
Please don't forget to rate the talk in the app, because we want to award the best speaker at the end of the conference. And then next up, here on the main stage, not this one, the next one, this one. We will have the panel discussion before the conference closing about what's the next big thing in Neos. You provided a lot of ideas on the wall outside, so we'll have a discussion about that. See you back here in 20 minutes. Thank you.